Hey guys, this is Scott from phasingplayer.com. This is my part 2 of the interview I did with Nate Hayden, game designer and game publisher. In it, we talk about his games Cave Evil and Mayan Sun Aztec Destiny. If you haven't listened to part 1 yet, go listen to it. It's on soundcloud.com/phasingplayer and youtube.com/phasingplayer. If you want to check out Nate's store, go to cave-evil.com, where everything he publishes and designs is for sale, as well as a bunch of stuff from his buddies and companies that he works with. For those unfamiliar, Cave Evil is a war game, I guess. I mean, it is a war game, but it's not really what you would think of when you think war game. This is a fantasy game. It is a very stark, black metal-looking aesthetic, and certainly not something based in history like so many war games are. Each player controls a necromancer who is trying to appease some great evil in a cave. You can also win by just killing all of the other necromancers in that cave. You collect cards and resources, and you use those resources to summon monsters, conjure spells, create items, and essentially bolster a bunch of squads that you have, and you use those on a hex grid to go fight other things in the cave. It sounds simple on its surface, but it is kind of a wild game. There's a lot of stuff going on, and I couldn't even begin to describe all of it right now. Really, just go look at it. If you go on Board Game Geek, there are a bunch of cool pictures and descriptions. Nate even made a short film about it. It's just a few minutes long, but there's a link to it, I believe, on a Board Game Geek thread. I'll put it in the description of this video, too. But Cave Evil's a whole thing, and is a big part of why people know who Nate Hayden is. Now, unfortunately, it has been out of print for a while. I believe Nate only ever made 1,000 copies of it and sold it through his store. It's really cool. It's very expensive, though, on the aftermarket, and we talk a bit about the potential reprint in this interview. So let's get to it. Well, speaking of Cave Evil, after Pablo, that was the next thing you put out. And this was your first collaborative release, because after Pablo and San Quentin and Mayan Sun were those are Nate Hayden titles, whereas Cave Evil is the Emperors of Eternal Evil. It's a group of people, and who is that? Who makes up the Emperors of Eternal Evil?
Matt Brinkman, Johan Hartman, and I would also say Drux or Commode Minstrels and Bullface has been a huge wheel in that too. But to be honest, the design and the business would be Matt and Johan. But Commode's been just tremendous with the art. I mean, he's just amazing. That guy's just amazing.
And you were familiar with Commode Minstrels when you were in high school, was that right?
Yeah, he was in this band I loved called Carolina Rainbow, and I heard about them as a freshman, and just what a neat band. And one day I was in a band eventually, and then I in my 20s we did a show with with him, and I went up to him and I said, "Oh man, I can't wait to play with you," and he's like, "Oh yeah, really?" Well, he's a goofy guy, just the way that he is, and just we kind of hit it off. And he did the covers for the albums of the band that I was in, and so we kind of had a working kind of back and forth, through the years. So by the time we made Cave Evil, he was just this other guy that was there, and it was just, this is what we're doing, Grux, and he's just would send us hundreds of pieces of art, but that the art direction primarily is Matt Brinkman. Matt's a tremendous artist.
Yeah,
and
I'm familiar with some of his stuff, and he's amazing.
Yeah, and him and I and Johan just sort of were talking about this game through kind of a forum, I guess. At that time, we were just bouncing stuff back and forth. Maybe it was like Yahoo groups or something. I can't remember. But and then started cobbling together these ideas, and eventually got together and created play tests and stuff like that, and it sort of just started rolling on from there.
So so Cave Evil is certainly your most well-known game. I think that's probably a pretty fair thing to say. And do you ever get like tired of people asking you to reprint it or asking like about it? You've made a bunch of stuff, your magazine games, like your mushroom eaters, and I feel like Cave Evil. Whenever I like mention Nate Hayden to someone or talking with people about horror games or whatever it might be, I feel like Cave Evil is what always comes up. Do you wish people would like look at the rest of your catalog?
Oh no, no. I just crank along no matter what. I mean, like people, the way the world is like, people might just get attracted to certain things, and I can't ever stop that. So if they get attracted to that, then that's pretty neat. I actually am a super big fan of Cave Evil too, man. I don't know. It's weird. I feel like I can be on the outside of that game, and just I want to keep going deeper and deeper and deeper into that game. And if we ever have chances to make more stuff, I'm chomping at the bit, because there's just it can go on and on and on. And so I don't have a problem. I as far as the printing of it, I just feel bad because it's such an expensive game to make, and it doesn't necessarily pay back as much as for how much it is. And so it's sort of that's a hard choice to always say, we just can't do that. It's just not, as odd as it may seem. But we've kind of figured out a way that we could do it so it doesn't break our back. It's just a tricky game to make. And we like to print in Denver, so we print everything here, and it's more expensive, and you have to helm that as a project to tell like the people what to do. It's you have to be on all cylinders, and sometimes things can be just too busy, and we can't really add it to our workload.
It's
But I
very
think it's
cool
good.
that
Yeah,
you print
can do
locally.
it. Yeah, I just love it. I did the cards of San Quentin King I did in China, and they did a good job. I like them, but it was odd. You kind of give these files, and then like 3 months later, the cards come. But when you're local, you can go straight down to the company, and everybody's name, and the guy, the pressman, and stuff like this. And it's just I just can't. I love it. I don't know.
Yeah, the Splatter guys, Joris and Jeroen, they print all their stuff locally too in the Netherlands, and
Oh,
it I think they've said that it adds to the cost of their games versus printing them overseas, or I guess in over there it'd be mainland still, but in China, and but they said, yeah, that supporting local businesses, having that personal relationship with the printer, all that sort of thing, is meaningful to them, and it sounds like it's meaningful to you too, to be able to have that relationship kind of face to face.
oh, and I love it, and there's to me a lot of advantages. So you have the personal relationships, which are great, but then you begin to understand the process so well that if you have a weird oddball idea, you can present it, and they can just work on it the next day. And we've designed ways to print now that are so much easier for us compared to what it was when I first started doing it. So, but that all took like learning what these machines can do, and like the amount of print space you have, the type of papers you have, and these things. And you then begin to it's kind of like learning After Effects or something. Like when you first learn After Effects, you're going to be like, yeah, I don't know, I can make a poof of smoke. But then after time, you're going to be like, this is just another tool I can do, and I can do this, and I can do that. And that's kind of what happens with like local printing. It sort of becomes, at first you're like, well, I want to make cards, and I'll make you cards. But eventually you really know how to make cards, and you know how to lay out the cards, and you know how like, oh, you know what? I could put like 4 more games on the same print run. And you just learn these like tricks, and it's kind of fun. I don't know.
That's cool. That's cool. So you sort of mentioned in passing a bit ago that you might have found a way to make printing Cave Evil a little more affordable or practical. In Cave Evil came out in 2011. You did do a reprint in 2013, and you've sort of since said like you're not going to do Cave Evil again. You're not going to do a reprint of Cave Evil. You've maybe lightened up on that a little, saying if you had the time to, you might. Do you feel like you might have the time to now? Do you think it could be coming?
Yeah, I fi- I figured out a recipe, like a printing recipe. Like again, if I went back to Cave Evil in 2011 and 2013, we were approaching these houses in a kind of an ignorant sense. Like you should have saw our first die that we made for Cave Evil was hilarious. It's seriously like 5 feet long or so. I don't know, maybe not that bad, but it's like 4 feet long. And the guy, it's just we didn't know what we were doing, and this just adds up costs. Like you can't, it just goes up and up. And if we were really honest about what we should have been selling Cave Evil for, it'd be out of a lot of people's ballpark.
Well, it was like
And so
$70, right? MSRP originally.
the War Cults was, I think, around that for the pre-sale, but the Cave Evil, I think we always just sold at 90. Maybe the first, I can't remember what we did for the first one. It might have been around 70, maybe 80, but it just wasn't. It's not truly accurate to how any real business should price something.
Sure.
But it was just we were just learning like what this thing was all about, and but oddly, like then the Kingdom Death came out, and I couldn't believe the prices. I was like, oh my gosh, I guess people will pay anything.
Yeah.
So
If you put miniatures in a game, people have decided they will spend hundreds on a title.
yeah, and that was all before. That was all after Cave Evil. So maybe I don't know. Maybe now we could have been pricing accurately the whole time, but we just inaccurately priced it, and that does hurt. It does cause problems. And so it was just a matter of like we really couldn't reprint it if we can't really afford to print it, and it's going to be something that actually could put us all in jeopardy. So, but now through learning the processes of and I've kind of figured out this way, you could do it this one way, and it would really knock down the costs a lot. So we're going to try it. We're going to give it a go.
Or do you have like a tentative like Q4 2020 or like sometime in 2021, or do you have any like loose idea?
So weird with this virus now, actually. I was going full steam ahead, and then the virus happened, and so now I really don't know what's going to happen. But I mean, and honestly, about the virus, I'm thinking we're going to probably shut the shop down for a bit of time. I just don't see how the mail system is going to be tricky. I mean, I think eventually people will see like, the mailmen are not, they're sick, or I don't know. It's presenting a lot of
the hope right now is
problems.
supply lines don't get shut down, right? But yeah, who knows?
Yeah, and maybe it's only a temporary. Like right now, I think we may shut it down for 2 weeks and just see what happens.
Sure.
So if this happens, I really don't know what's going to happen. But it was going full steam ahead, and I don't think it would have been out this year. But our plan is to put out these sort of other games related to KV, or these other Cave Evil games that are expansions and both, but also kind of standalone.
Mm-hmm.
Should in the background be making Cave Evil. So, but we'll see what happens. The times are strange, so I don't know. I don't know what will happen.
With all your games, you've actually kind of just quickly mentioning with After Pablo and Cave Evil 2, you've through Board Game Geek, that's kind of a great place for people to discuss variants to rules or like tweaks so they feel are good balance changes. In After Pablo, there was some talk about the 5 perfect crossing getting you 5 points, but you had said in playtesting it was 4 points, and you felt like 5 points was a little too much ultimately. In Cave Evil, there's a variant on Board Game Geek that I think you've acknowledged called Turbo Necro that and kind of increases the speed of the game a little bit. And those kind of things, I think a lot of other people, and we keep going back to Phil Eklund here, but I think we both kind of respect him as a designer and are familiar with his catalog, so it's an easy sort of reference point. But Phil he loves living rules. Every game he puts out, I think every game has living rules, probably going from the time of release to like 3 or 4 or 5 years after it's been out. Have you ever like flirted with the idea of making living rules for games, saying like, hey, I know after Pablo was published saying 5 points for a perfect five, it's actually probably better at four. So here's the new official rules for, or a cave evil that
That's a really
says
good
it's
question, actually, because actually I don't mind living rules in the longest in the long term. I don't really, it doesn't bother me, but I keep thinking like, what's the dude 20 years from now who wasn't alive during the living rules being adjusted all the time? When he first gets the game, he's going to get like the printed rules, you know. And because I'm that guy with like a lot of the classic games I play, like I just have the rules from the original thing, and I don't have the errata sometimes. Like a lot of these games went through errata phases, and I'll just have the base rules. I can't, right? Obviously, every game's slipping out of my brain right now. But with a lot of classic games you buy, you're going to get like the rules in there. And I always just think like about that guy, because we're all going to be gone, or we're going to be doing other things in 20 years, whatever it may be. And so I'm always kind of a little bit like, well, it's going to be just, we got to consider these original rules as they are. And because the guy, you've probably purchased that used game that has like all the errata in there, and the guy put all that stuff in the used game, and you're like, oh, very cool, he put all that in there. But sometimes doesn't happen. So I'm always thinking about that. This might be the only time these rules are really uttered, and then the guy never collects any of the errata or the living rule extra stuff. I mean, now we have the computer, and it might be there for a long while, but I don't know. So I'm pretty firm about like, okay, these are just going to be the rules. You guys can do whatever I think I'm always like, do whatever you want with it, man. Please make your own house rules. But I don't think I don't think I ever want to really adjust them myself and go, hey, this is it from now on. I'll just mostly be an advocate for people house ruling. Like, please, if you think it needs to be 5 points, then do it, man. But I'm thinking about the kid like 20 or 30 years from now who might play this, and we're not around, or he can't find those forums, and he has to just live with those rules that are written. So
that's legit. I'm sure the kid 20 years from now respects that and appreciates that.
I hope. I just know that I'm not the guy. I don't usually seek errata. I think I did for Magic Realm. I did go find a bunch of stuff, but other than that, I'll just go with whatever the rules are in there, and it could be the first edition of something. Like I have the first edition Twilight Struggle, and I'm never gonna go look for the errata. The Twilight Struggle I'm gonna play will be the one that's in the box. You know, like what I don't have that time really for probably the most part. You know, and I actually don't even know where to look. I guess you could probably find the current rules of Twilight Struggle, but I'll just assume that, like, I'll just check out what they tried to do here. You know, like maybe there's some weird thing they've fixed since the first edition. You know, so.
Yeah, you would hope that a sold product would have a complete rulebook, right? That's like a playable, legitimate thing.
Yeah, but I'll be loose if something's kind of crappy, and it's just like, well, let's just say this, you know, like, well, let's make a house rule right now that this is going to be this way. So I'm not super purist in any sense. I do think house rules need to happen. To maintain a living rule set, I would honestly probably get confused myself too, and I wouldn't know what my original intentions were. Sometimes I think your original intentions actually could be really cool sometimes, and later on in life you can be like, oh wow, that's right, that is why I did that, and you're kind of happy you stuck with that. Yeah, so I don't know if I could maintain living rule sets, but I definitely encourage, if people want to house rule things, do it. Absolutely.
Cool, right on. So I have two more things to ask you about Cave Evil here. Did it ever come out in the Czech Republic? You had mentioned that there was a discussion too.
We've talked back and forth. We're good friends with these friends of ours out there, and it's a beast to print, and I think they got the same feeling.
Yeah.
And as you know, as it was going, I think they were like, yeah, I don't know, we can do this. So it may happen. I mean, I'm going to talk to that guy pretty soon. I just noticed he emailed me, so I'm going to see what he has to say. But I would be totally for it. If I would definitely be for like licensing the game in different countries to be printed.
That'd be cool. That'd be rad.
Shipping costs are just insane. So it's built in that country. It seems like wise for a lot of reasons, but yeah, just to avoid shipping costs for Europeans and whatever nation wants to play it, you know.
Sure. And then what is the Cave Evil cult? Is that familiar at all to you? When you one of the first things you said when you were talking about Cave Evil is you said, "Hey, email this email address or hit up one of us on Board Game Geek. Ask about the Cave Evil cult. Say you want to be a member." You said there were like think giveaways or like T-shirts and buttons.
Cool.
I actually just stumbled across this the other day, and that might have
been like one of the first posts or something.
Yeah, I didn't know if that was gonna be something you remembered or not.
Yeah, I don't. It probably was just a moniker of some sort that because we were. I think we raised money with that through creating these other items, and people could buy patches or something and shirts and stuff like this to raise money. The first raising of the money was before Kickstarter, so we had to do these kind of strange things. And I think that was like one of the things we did was like kind of create these things. But I'm sure there is a Cave Evil somewhere. I mean, I don't know.
Maybe I'm digging too deep in some of this. I'm getting too deep into the dungeon.
No, there's definitely esoteric stuff, but like no religion, no strong religion.
We've already talked about Mayan Sun a little bit, how it was one of your earlier designs, and you eventually published it in 2012, and it was done as a print and play, right? Like that was sort of the intent. It was not going to be a retail product.
Well, no, I think it was just I hand did it. I made everything by hand for. Actually, no, the board was made at a print on demand, but I did all the die cut pieces and stuff, and I just wanted to make a couple copies. Like I just wanted to get it out before 2012. I'd forgotten. I think I'd been working on Cave Evil, so I'd been so enmeshed in that, and then 2012 rolled around. Well, actually, right after Cave Evil, I came back from Spiel, and my mom I talked to my mom. I'm like, "Mom, I'm back from Germany." Blah blah blah. And she's was a funny woman, but she's like, "Yeah, that's great. I'm really glad you went to Germany. Well, I just want to let you know, the doctor says I have like 2 weeks to live." Or like this.
Gosh.
And like it's kind of everything stopped, and we had to run out to be with her, and she passed away, and so that there was so much stuff that happens with the parent's death, with a parent's death that you just keep, it goes along much longer than a funeral.
Mm-hmm. I can understand that.
Yeah. So that next year, that 2012 was all about the kind of business of what happens after death. But in that I was like, oh my gosh, it's 2012. I got to make that game. And so in the midst of doing all that other stuff, I was made that game, and I just did not have a lot of time to make many copies. And so I just made a few copies and just would put it out at like Spiel. And that was pretty much, I think that was all I ever made. And,
yeah, it seems to be certainly one of your rarer titles to find in the aftermarket. Those don't crop up too often.
Yeah, I didn't make many of those. I just did not have time. But it was I tried to do what I could, and that was. But after that, I can't remember what happened, but it just something else got going on, and I had to jump onto another thing.
What was the impetus for making it kind of two games in one? There's like a basic mode and then the advanced mode.
That was purely my own fun, because I'd made the first, I think it's like Mayan Sun is. I made that one. It's as simple as can be, and it's just kind of. I can't remember what games I was kind of playing or like wanting it to be like or anything. I just wanted a real simple, whatever this family game thing is, and just made a very simple mechanical game. But then this other part of me wanted to just put something in that I would just have fun playing in the years to come. Is like, what the hell was I thinking? Type of thing. and so I was like, I just thought about kind of these other weird, odd things. I just wanted to try these weird, odd things, and then later on in life, kind of like wonder what the hell I was doing. And so I just plopped those other things there, kind of just for my own. I thought I don't know. I thought it would just be kind of interesting. I don't know. I don't know if it works or not. It's just for me that to me it's just kind of maybe my humor or something for myself. I don't know.
It's certainly an interesting game. I mean, I think it's fair to say the vast majority of your games are at least like engaging on some sort of spiritual or emotional level, and Mayan Sun, especially I kind of love the rulebook for Mayan Sun. It's filled with like quotes about sort of humanity's demise or like spiritualism and all that sort of thing. And then like the back has like a glossary of like important dates that are listed in the game and why they're there, what is significant about them. And I think that sort of theming really comes through in the game, even though the gameplay is, and I don't mean this in a dismissive way, but it's a Euro game, right? It's sort of resource management. It was
definitely supposed to be, yeah, in a sense. I think because I was appealing to European publishers, and so I was trying to be just a designer, and so it was definitely a Euro-minded game. And I think, but by that time I was already kind of out of that Euro-mindedness. So I think the other half of it is, and I tried for kind of years to deny this part of myself, but this sort of fascination with metaphysics and the occult and these kinds of things, and that allowed me to kind of begin to go into that realm. And I did it almost in like a jokey way because I still didn't like, I don't know why metaphysical stuff appeals to me. And then when I say metaphysics, I don't mean like the metaphysical bookshop stuff, but I mean like philosophical Platonic metaphysics of why the world works in these ways. And to me, like the Mayan calendar is really, you couldn't, I mean, that the Mesoamerican calendar is just so intriguing as far as that is concerned. But now there was all this gobbledygook that people put out because of 2012. But if you really focus on just the calendar and like what these, I was getting kind of into it at the time, but just how they broke up they would go through how they created a year, and that at the end of the year they had like these 5 days. I want to say 5. It was like these 5 days they considered these evil days, and they would never go out. And that's what made 365 days. Because I think if you made it mathematically another way, it's I think just 30 day months. You know, you get like 360. I remember. But so they just there's all this reasoning to it that didn't have that gobbledygook that was put on there. That I wanted to make sure that was slightly in there, but I just didn't know how to do it. The first game was just so light, you know, that it wasn't really going to ever put that in there. And I think I just wanted, like, some part of me was like, all right, I got to sprinkle this in.
Yeah, you add the kind of, I think one of the more significant things added is players have to guess kind of when and how the world is going to end, and sort of like try to predict that, which is absent in the base game.
Yeah, I don't know if it really works. I played it recently, and I like it. I like those weird oddball mechanics because it was also I was invented. I just like want to just try mechanics sometimes. Like what if this thing just does this? What does it do? But I don't. Yeah, the prediction. When I say it doesn't really work, it doesn't like to me work in like a real metaphysical sense. In some sense, like you're trying to make it actually happen, and that's different
right.
than I think the Mayan calendar is really about. Like I don't know, maybe not. We started going down that rabbit hole, but yeah, like maybe you do bring the end by pulling at it in some sense.
It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Maybe. I don't
Yeah,
know.
this game also has one of my favorite first player determination rules in it. Which do you happen to recall what you had written about how to figure out who the first player is going to be in the game?
Actually, I don't remember that one.
It is the player who most recently went on and on and on about the world coming to an end. And I think
There's
I
going to
think
be
it's
a
pretty
guy at
funny.
the table that has gone on and on and on about the
Yeah, I'm certain there will be. So I'm Nate. I'm gonna dig into the archives again here for you.
Oh,
You
jeez.
mentioned in Mayan Sun and on Board Game Geek that you had quote a completely stupid story about Y2K that involves alcohol, fireworks, and jail. Do you know what I'm talking about by chance?
Oh yeah. I do. I
What,
did. I went to jail.
would you mind
To jail.
recounting that story?
I went to jail on Y2K. I went was Y2K. That there was the idea that there was all going to be riots and the world was going to end. So I took precautions and I took a knife with me and I put it on my belt. And it was actually a pretty fucking long knife. It was way past the legal point. And I went downtown and I had fireworks with me, and they were legal fireworks. And in Colorado, you can't like light fireworks that pop. So I figured I was actually okay. So I just started lighting fireworks right in front of like right in front of a line of police officers, and the fireworks don't pop; they just go like these like soft poofs, and that didn't they didn't give a shit what I was doing. So they just grabbed me and threw me on the ground, and then they saw that they pulled out my knife, and it was definitely over the legal limit of the knife, and they handcuffed me. I was already pretty drunk, and being just New Year's Eve, and so then they took me downtown and booked me, and I was just being like kind of young and kind of stupid, but I didn't tell them my name. I didn't have my wallet on me, and I just wouldn't tell them my name, and they kept me in there until I told them my name, and so I didn't get out for like 3 days.
Oh my
And
gosh.
so it was pretty funny. It wasn't fun. It was funny and it wasn't funny.
Funny in retrospect, maybe.
Yeah, it was just the beginning of the Y2K, and yeah, it was that was the story of the Y2K. Yeah, I was just
I
got to
think
spend 3 nights in jail.
computers are gonna ruin the world. So what I need is some booze, something to light on fire, and a big old knife. And that was your mindset, and you
Well,
went out into the
yeah,
world.
in case it was dangerous, in case like the yeah, and why I think I went from like a rock show downtown, and then I was already kind of drunk anyway, and they just probably put on a knife and just like, I don't know about this Y2K, you know, let's grab this, and yeah, this kind of sucks because I lost the knife after that, and it was like
Oh,
this kind of
bummer.
fake knife, but yeah, it was interesting. It was interesting. But I was curious, like how long can you just be in jail for not telling your name? I figured they could figure out who I was. Yeah, I guess you got to say your name.
Huh.
You got to
Interesting.
thought it'd be on record or something like. He's
Well, I
just
guess did they ever find out your name? Are you on record now?
yeah. It's finally said, well, here's who I am. This is.
Let me go.
But
I did fine. My name's Nate.
no,
Get me out of here.
it was silly. It was silly. It was dumb. And but um, yeah, it was dumb, but kind of illuminating in some weird way. It's not a good way. Like you don't want to be illuminated in that way.
Sure. All right. So this is like kind of only tangentially related to Mayan Sun. Or actually, I feel like I'd be remiss to not recite the full name of this game because I think it's a brilliant name. At least according to Board Game Geek, this is the full name of the game. Mayan Sun Aztec Destiny 500 BC to AD 2012 to Beyond Infinity. It's a good name.
And that is the name.
You've got you certainly have a way. I don't know if it's stuff that comes out of random name generators like Cave Evil or if it's stuff you sit down and pen, but you have a way with names, and I feel like most of the names of your games stand out, certainly.
Cool. I don't know why I named it. I mean, I think I had the that was that was a really hard game to name. And I think I just at some point like I'm never gonna get the name. Sometimes I'm like a name will pop up and like that's the name, but that never really happened. And so I just had to differentiate the two different types of games. And I was a big fan of like really long names, like the incredibly strange creatures that stopped living and became mixed up zombies. And
Yep, I've been meaning to watch that one actually.
I've never seen it, but I had no problem. It was like it's going to just be a horrendously long name.
Well, it's a great name, and everyone I've mentioned that name to are immediately like, all right, I want to know what this game is.
Oh, cool.
Which is funny because I feel like the name is actually kind of like very literal in some way. And so I feel like you maybe know what the game is if you just know the name of the game.
Yeah, maybe. That's odd because I think I don't know. I feel like I let that game name down. So it's kind of cool to hear.
No,
I just could never come up with like a snappy title. I just I don't know.
No, you don't need snappy titles, man. I think of all your games, you might have nailed it most with that one.
That's cool to hear because I was actually like, well, this is just gonna be it.
I think that name and Bus are my favorite board game names.
It's a good name. That is a good name.
Yeah.
Bus is like getting like this like kind of resurgence.
Well, it just got re-released. It just got re-released by Capstone. They put out a new edition of it.
Okay. Yeah, I've been hearing, a lot more Bus. I remember that that was available when I was buying a lot of Splotter, but I never did buy Bus. I wish I bought Bus now.
Yeah, it's always been like one of their unsung kind of classics in a way. It didn't invent worker placement games, but it certainly is one of the first. And I think it just came out early in like 99, and I think now it's going to start getting some of its due recognition because Capstone put it out. But yeah, Bus is a cool game, but so is Mayan Sun Aztec Destiny 500 BC 80 2012 Beyond Infinity. Those are both good games.
Oh man, that's probably the best thing I heard all day. I thought I failed that name.
As I was a little bit of a tangent, but the question that only is kind of related to Mayan Sun that I wanted to ask you is, are you a Coast to Coast AM guy at all?
No, I'm actually not. See, that's the thing that game was my shyness about being clear about metaphysical things is there's a goofiness and I'll totally recognize it. It's like, well, that's corny, like, and I'm not saying Coast to Coast is corny. I'm not saying that, but
it is very corny.
It's not my forte. I really do. I really, there are things in the occult and in philosophical metaphysics that are totally, to me, I mean, they're real. I could like sit and explain them, but then obviously it'd become a tangent of some sort. But it's sort of for many years I denied that because my dad is an aerospace engineer and just a very logical person, and so he just if I go off on some certain things, he just won't really listen to it. And so I felt like to kind of suppress that kind of interest in some sense, but it's always been there. And then eventually, I just went full bore for myself in some sense, and just kind of recognize it. But that game was probably a little bit of eking at it and kind of going, I really like this stuff, but I don't know really how to approach it, and I don't really know what best to do. But yeah, you're going on as far. I'm not a huge watcher of Coast to Coast, but there are people that we would probably start to talk about, and we'd go, okay, yeah. Okay. I think at that, like Terrence McKenna was a little bit of that at that time. I was probably listening to some Terrence McKenna, but from there, I just got into real like ancient philosophy. And in ancient philosophy, it gets into very interesting things that I just, and then you would have to go back kind of, it's like Phil Eklund in a sense, or something like this with Origins. you go back and you go, oh my gosh, these people are brilliant. Like the guys creating that calendar were brilliant. The guys creating these things, like what were they doing? And there's a really good book I would recommend called Herbac, Herbac, about a little Egyptian boy entering into the mystery schools of Egypt, and it's just a really good book that kind of describes that what these people are dealing with, because they're creating hieroglyphics, and like hieroglyphics, they're trying to express perfect truths through just stone carvings and so on and so forth. So we've even forgotten how we had forgotten how to even read them. But then what this kid does, what his schooling is like, is just really interesting, and he's kind of going up the scales of a mystery school, and it's interesting. It's interesting, and I think there's a lot of validity to it. I mean, like we speak in rational terms, and we speak in these kind of terms, but we also have these real psychodramatic things going on in our lives too, and they can come in dreams. Like we were talking horror. Horror is a symbolic thing in a lot of ways, in a kind of sense, a hieroglyph of sort. And it's just sort of that Mayan Sun was the beginning of that kind of understanding that, there's something to it, and I'm not going to deny it anymore, and so kind of suppress it because I have to always maintain it rational thought. You can be very rational and juggle metaphysical ideas. I mean, that's what Plato would be, definitely.
All right, well, that's going to do it for part 2 of this interview. In the next part, we're going to talk about in one of Nate's most notorious games, the Mushroom Eaters. We'll also talk about the magazine horror games that Nate has been putting out for the last several years, like Psycho Raiders and one of my favorites, Sea Evil. So keep an eye out for part 3 coming soon. And if you enjoy this content and want to see some of the video stuff we do, go check out phasingplayer.com for links to our video content as well as written stuff that I put out on occasion. If you really like the show, consider a donation. Go to phasingplayer.com/donate, where there's a few options where you can send me some cash if you're feeling super generous. But of course, it is not an obligation. Well, I hope that if you're listening to this in 2020, you're staying safe, staying healthy, and if you are listening to this after the fact, well, that means you survived 2020, so that's real cool. So good on ya, and I will see you guys later.